So you asked for one. I'm gonna give you options. So I have a couple. I think the first one to consider is that oftentimes, these young men of color live in neighborhoods that are just strife for lack of opportunity. So I think something around almost a promise zone concept in California, though, because there's in the city of Stockton, it's not. There's boys and men of color in every neighborhood, but there's certain neighborhoods where poverty is concentrated, where opportunities are scarce, and that's just not Stockton. That's everyone has the East Oaklands, the West Oaklands, parts of Coachella. Like every community has those blocks, and in those blocks you'll have a high concentration of young men of color who are out of work, who are dealing with intergenerational trauma, who go to failing schools, who don't have access to health care, who have nothing but liquor stores and fast food places, that are just in communities that aren't ripe for any sort of opportunity. So some policy that really helps a really place-based and demographic-specific focus on those things, I think would be a huge step forward. Another policy that it's a little bit crazy, but I do think, I remember during the Great Depression, the Work Progress Administration just put a lot of people to work. And I think for a lot of, especially in Stockton, the economic conditions oftentimes bear root in our issues we have with crime rates and poverty rates and things of that sort. And people want to work, whether they're ex-offenders, whether they're not ex-offenders, whether they're high school students. I can't tell you how many of the students I teach come to me and say, Mr. Tubbs, can I have a job? So some sort of California Work Progress Administration pseudo thing where we're able to find opportunities for folks to work and get jobs, I think would be a huge difference maker. And then I would be remiss to mention today I have a young man with me who was, at first we didn't think he was going to graduate from high school the way he was acting his freshman year, but over the past 4 years he's been done great work. So after this we're going to go take him to Sac State where he'll be attending in the fall. So I just want to publicly say, Jelani, so proud of you. Thank you for hanging out with me today. And then the last thing I want to mention is that Ricardo alluded to it, but it was a really powerful point that for the past 15 years, Stockton was not an all-American city, and this year we were, but we were because of the work we've been doing for young men of color, with young men of color, and led by young men of color. So that we took a bunch of formerly incarcerated people, a bunch of young men of color, a bunch of young men who were previously been involved with the juvenile justice system, and they went and represented the city of Stockton before the nation and really showed that the future of any city is oftentimes in the least of these, or the marginalized, or the folks that people might to forget about. So Ricardo, thank you for mentioning that, because I think that's really what we're all here for, right? It's that like these people aren't just problems, they're assets, and they're huge victories for the community. So thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Nunez. Thank you, Mr. Tubbs. Special thank you to Ricardo. Thank you for being here and being part of this panel.
Always a pleasure.
Thank you. We'll go to our final panel. MBK Sacramento, Vice Mayor Rick Jennings from the City of Sacramento, and Matt Cervantes, Sierra Health Foundation. Welcome.
Good afternoon.
The floor is yours.
Good. Thank you so much for having us here today. My name is Rick Jennings, Vice Mayor of the City of Sacramento. That's one of my part-time jobs. My other job is I run a nonprofit organization very similar to Mr. Nuez called the Center for Fathers and Families. I've run that organization for 20 years, doing the work to help young fathers, young men, in their effort to reestablish themselves with their families, go into the workforce, get their GED, develop positive changes, second chances that many of us had ourselves, to be able to take advantage of second chances and become a contributing member of our society. So it's just the work I do on my part-time, but I'm here with Matt Cervantes from the Sierra Health Foundation. He's going to start us off, and then I'm going to give you some background information on the City of Sacramento, some data. I'm also going to give you some of the current efforts that we have in place, and moving forward, what kind of support we need in order to make our dreams, aspirations, and hopes come true.
Thank you, Mr. Jennings. And Chair and Banta and Member Garcia, really appreciate the invitation to participate today. Sierra Health Foundation is a health conversion foundation. We've been around 30 years, investing nearly $100 million in Northern California. I'm absolutely pleased to join longtime partners at the city when the mayor stepped up for the community challenge, and then Sacramento City Unified School District, one of our largest school districts, over 70% of their students free and reduced lunch. So a natural partner for this kind of work. Sierra Health Foundation has a broad definition of health, believing there is much more to health than health care. Health is influenced by many factors, including socioeconomic conditions, environment, education, income, housing, neighborhood safety, and other drivers of health outcomes, what we call the social determinants of health. Clearly, where we live, work, and play has a significant influence on our health. It's, again, a natural fit in terms of this work. One thing that Sierra Health Foundation does that we are proud of in approaching our work is apply a racial and health equity approach to our investments, recognizing there are actually systemic barriers to opportunities to live a healthy life. Much of our grant making addresses those systemic barriers. And we know communities of color are experiencing those disparities the greatest, those disconnections from opportunities around employment, education, housing, and that is our priority. Again, a natural fit within My Brother's Keeper, and we've been a longtime partner in really the Boys and Men of Color movement here in California for a number of years, working closely with Policy Link and local community partners. We have, as I mentioned, put our grant-making dollars to addressing these systemic barriers, funding minority-led organizations in Northern California through what's called Leadership Development for Racial Equity grant-making program, actually investing in the leaders of color who are actually working at the grassroots level to remove these systemic barriers so young people can thrive. We have embraced the life course framework that was mentioned in previous presentations locally for our My Brother's Keeper work. Councilmember Jennings will go into more detail around that. But it is a thread that connects many of the 26 communities across the state that have focused on the community challenge. We have, as I mentioned, really focused on these more systemic barriers to young people's success, recognizing that whether it's willful defiance or the disciplinary policies that are more punitive to youth of color, juvenile justice issues that we have a deep investment in through our Positive Youth Justice Initiative, just by nature of the young people within those systems, the juvenile justice system in particular, are youth of color. We know young people of color experience more punitive, more harsh treatment once they're in the system. And locally, we've seen the males of color being dramatically overrepresented in the juvenile justice system. And that's something that we're committed to addressing. Our president and CEO, Chet Hewitt, is co-chair of the California Executive Alliance, which was presented earlier. Clearly, a deep connection to this work, and our local partners through the City of Sacramento, Sac City Unified School District, and the really tens and dozens of nonprofits and young people themselves, as I think we heard from Ricardo a moment ago, really leading this work. We share a value of our partners in Stockton, longtime partners in Stockton. When we talk about young people, we engage our young people in doing so. And one piece that, to highlight is a convening we held in partnership with the My Brother's Keeper partners, convening 600 individuals, young people, parents, community-based organizations to get their input. What are the needs that they're experiencing in their lives? What observations, those policy changes that need to occur, really lifting up from young people themselves. Really powerful event, and I know Councilmember will speak to the specifics of those in the plan. Our collective action plan, if fully realized, clearly would address these systemic barriers. We appreciate the leadership of this Assembly Select Committee, and are certainly committed to moving the policy changes at the ground level, as Sammy mentioned, really working with the community-based organizations to implement the spirit of the policies that are passed through this committee. Councilmember.
Thank you so much. Sierra Health Foundation is a strong partner. I can't say enough what they've done in order to make a difference in the region that we're in. And so I want to thank them publicly for the work that they're doing and the work that they will do. We know that we can always count on them and I'm excited to be a partner with them. I said I was going to start with background first. I think I want to start with stats because I want to give you the background as to why the background started in the first place. In Sacramento County, 53% of the students are black and Latino. There's more than a 23% achievement gap between African Americans, Latino, Native American students, and their white peers. 23% achievement gap. Dropout rates are the highest, with Native Americans at 30.8%, African Americans 23.1%, Latinos 17.1%, and 10.8% white. Only 18% of African Americans and 20% of Latino students graduate high school A through G eligible. 18% African Americans and 20% Latino graduate high school A through G eligible. African Americans account for 12% of the population aged 10 through 17, but account for 40% of the juvenile arrests in that same age group. African Americans are arrested at 4 times the rate of any other race or ethnicity. We speak 50 different languages in Sacramento. Our population is about 480,000. We have definitely the opportunity to get better. The opportunity is there. And so 5 years ago, a group of nonprofit organizations, along with Building Healthy Communities and the Sacramento School District, got together and they formed the Boys of Men of Color Collaborative. That was 2011. That was long before the President's initiative on My Brother's Keeper. But we were excited because we started that with nonprofits, school districts, Sierra Health Foundation by our side, California Endowment, partners who really, leaders and partners who really wanted to make a difference in Sacramento. And since then, I think you know, and I think you've seen the report, and you have the report, and if you don't, we'll make sure you get a copy of it in Sacramento. We've accepted the President's My Brother's Keeper Community Challenge, and we did that in the fall of 2014. Again, Sierra Health Foundation, Sac City Unified School District, taking a significant lead in driving this regional effort. We've convened a steering committee comprised of individuals representing universities, nonprofits, government entities, businesses, civic organizations to develop the My Brother's Keeper Action Plan. And I want to make sure you understand that we did this in collaboration with the community, their parents, and our best participants were the students themselves. That was our number one priority, was to hear the voice of the student and have them there to develop our action plan. I think if I can brag on Sacramento for a moment, I just want to let you know that we've been named the most diverse city in America and also the nation's most integrated city. And we were recently designated with a Promise Zone designation by the U.S. Department of Housing and Urban Development. And I'm going to talk about that a little bit later as we go through that. This designation, as you know, comes with resources to support local leaders, creates jobs, increase the economic activity, improve educational opportunities, and reduce violent crime. So we want to make sure we take advantage of that. And so I'm looking forward to your questions on how we can take advantage of that using that designation of the Promise Zone. So as such, you would have high expectations for this region, this county, this Sacramento area that we call home. And we do have high expectations. We have accepted all 6 milestones identified by the White House in the MBK initiative. Community leaders have met 3 times in the last year to talk about the improving the future for boys and men of color. These are our leaders who have met, given up their time to do so. And so far, some of the results have been this. We have a Male Leadership Academy started in 2011 to address the issues of dropout rates, suspensions among young men of color within the Sacramento City Unified School District. Youth were selected for the program based on academic needs, behavioral concerns, and once accepted in the program, they work with a dedicated staff to provide support and opportunities for each one of them. So the great thing about the Male Leadership Academy is it got started. The bad thing is, of the 6 large school districts in Sacramento, it is in 1 school district. In that 1 school district that has over 50 schools, it is only in 7. So while we started something great, I heard Councilmember Tubbs say it best. Solutions exist, but the resources are slim to none. The annual Boys and Men of Color Summit, we have been doing that since 2011. And I want to make sure that you know that every time we do this at a major college university, UC Davis or Sac State. I remember the very first time I stepped foot on a college campus. I remember that like it was yesterday. And when I got on that campus, I knew that I would never leave, and I knew that my future had been changed forever. I had never stepped foot on a college campus before I graduated from high school. And because I was there on an athletic scholarship and I went to the school to look to see what they had to offer, once I got there with all the resources that were available to me, I knew my potential was unlimited. So we take that same model and we make sure that kids have the opportunity to be on a college campus. The great thing is we do that for one day, and we serve anywhere from 200 when we first started up to 600 kids who are there. And they have mentors, and we have programs and a full day of schedule. And it's a very effective program, and I think it changed the lives of many. Wouldn't it be great to have that same program for one full week for those same kids to live on a college campus, to sleep there, to eat the dorm foods, to socialize with the students, and understand what college is all about, so that their future would be changed forever, and they would not be the same as they came into the school. We have a Youth in Action Summit. It's the Southeast Asian Summit that we put on every year as well in order to address the culturally specific issues for our Southeast Asian kids. We have a Young Men of Color advocacy group, and they're working with the Black Parallel School Board. It's a group of students that we train to conduct action-based research. The research reveals that a high number of young men of color were being suspended from school. This is what they found out: suspended and expelled at disproportionate rates. This information led them to start a campaign on getting the school district to implement a restorative justice plan. And I'm proud to say in 2014, the school district passed the Positive School Climate Policy, which led to restorative justice and social emotional learning improvements in the district. These young kids, from their work, being trained by older mentors who are helping them to understand how they can be the change they want to see, these young men were able to change policy in our school district. One school district. We've got to do more. We've been meeting with the Sacramento County, or we'll have a meeting with the Sacramento County Probation Department to not only talk about kids that are currently in school and in our public school system, but those kids that are incarcerated and in school in the probation department. Those kids that have dropped out of school who need their GED. So we are constantly working to try to identify those kids and get them back into a program to get them back on the right track. So we have a meeting today, as a matter of fact, to talk about that. We've been working positively on the reduction of African American child deaths. A recent Blue Ribbon Committee was commissioned and reported the fact that African American children in Sacramento die 2 times at the rate of other children. And the 4 leading causes of death: infant sleep-related deaths, child abuse and neglect homicides, third-party homicides. The goal is to reduce the deaths among African American children by 20% in 2020. And then finally, the thing I want to talk about is the Mayor's Gang Prevention and Intervention Task Force. We lose too many of our kids to gang violence and incarceration. I happen to know that personally, as I sat on the school steps at Calvin Coolidge High School in 1969, and a drive-by shooting took place. The bullet didn't hit me, it hit the young man next to me. I have not figured out today why I stand before you and he no longer is here. But I know that God had purpose for my life, and I try to live every day to fulfill that purpose. And I try to be an example for every other young man to understand his purpose as well. That task force is comprised of 30 multidisciplinary agencies, including schools, faith-based leaders, law enforcement, county health and human services, Kaiser Hospital, and foundations such as Sierra Health Foundation and the California Endowment. And they're implementing a comprehensive framework focused on 4 areas: school-based and justice systems, community empowerment, workforce readiness, and regional accountability. So in closing, we want to do everything we can to address the pressing need of our boys and young men of color. And that's not at the exclusion of our young girls. We understand that. But in every statistic that you'll read, our boys are always falling behind. I don't care which statistic it is. Employment, education, divorce, graduation, exposure. They're the first in what they should be the last in, and they're the last in what they should be the first in. And so right now we're talking about boys and men of color. So as we move forward, we have the right strategies: health equity, educational success, youth development, improved employment and labor force, as well as the decreased contact of child welfare, law enforcement, juvenile, and criminal justice. For the past 5 years, we've built an effective collaboration. We've done the best with limited resources that we could. We've got a groundswell that's ready for the next step, that's looking for a partner, that's ready to help them with the resources to be able to take on the world. I see that partner sitting right in front of me. We have implemented effective strategies: the annual summit, Male Leadership Academy, grassroots effort, collaboration, GAIN task force, reduction on our African American child deaths. Yet we're not touching 5% of the population. We have a Promise Zone designation, but we need additional resources in order to be able to leverage that designation. And we want the best for our kids. We want to save every single child. We truly don't want to leave any child behind, if I can use that. We want the CEO youth internship that you talked about. We want the 1-week summit in our colleges. We want our male leadership academies on every single campus. The person who replaces me as the city council member should come from the schools where we have implemented leadership academies, and they understand governance, and they understand leadership, and they understand their responsibility to make a difference in the community that they grew up in and love. We will document our outcomes. We will make sure that we inspect what we expect, and we will become a best practice because of the results that we have. And we will make sure that there are employment opportunities as well as educational opportunities for the least among us who have fallen by the wayside. So I thank you for your time and your energy in this matter. I'm looking forward to working with you. That $100 million that's on the table, we could take it all. But being a good partner and a good teammate, we'll take our share to make a difference, because we want to make sure that Stockton, Oakland, and the other cities in the state of California also are doing the same important work in their communities as well. So with that, I'll close.
Thank you very much, Vice Mayor Jennings and Mr. Cervantes. Questions or comments? Okay. I just want to highlight a couple of things that you mentioned. First of all, thank you both. In your comments, you talked about how you really promote and uplift and cultivate a youth-driven process, and how the voices of youth are so important to the steps that you take and the action that you take. And in hearing from Ricardo today and knowing how important our youth voice is, I just want to acknowledge that and thank you for building that in to what you do every day, not making it a once-in-a-while thing. I also want to thank you for pointing out that there are solutions that have been implemented and are working, and that the issue is resources, and that's where we come in, and we're hoping to make a significant contribution in that area this year with our $100 million request. And then finally, I want to say that I want to acknowledge one of the things that you said that also echoed what Mayor Schaaf said, which is that we can do better. That when we get into these positions, some people who are not in the same positions consider us the establishment. But our job, and you said it, and so did Mayor Schaaf when she said these statistics are shameful and they're unacceptable. Our job is to acknowledge the deficits and challenges and problems that exist in the communities that we represent, and to do everything and anything we can to fix them. It's not to defend the status quo. And a lot of people do the latter instead of the former. And it's important to acknowledge those problems They are what they are, and people look to us to work with partners and community leaders to fix them. So I just want to thank you for, without hesitation, acknowledging that there are significant challenges that we can continue to need to face, and that's what we're all here to do together. So you're doing a wide range of exciting work in your district. Thank you for so passionately and articulately and inspirationally sharing that with us today. It makes me even more committed than I already was to making sure that $100 million gets out the door and into the hands of folks that are making a difference and transforming lives.
All right.
So
Thank you. So I'll close on behalf of all of us that were here today, Sacramento, Stockton, and Oakland. And there's a saying that I think we all live by. He or she who is behind in the great race of life must run faster or forever remain behind. It is our job to help them to run faster. It is our job to make sure that they're never left behind. And we take that job seriously. You see it by bringing the students that we have here today. You see it in the students that have dropped out of school and are now getting ready to go to college. You see it by the council member and vice mayor who's sitting in front of you today. I see it in each one of you. I am looking forward to helping these kids, this next generation, to run faster and to never be left behind. Thank you so much.
likewise, thank you so much. Let's go to public comment, if we have any. I know we've had a robust conversation, and we're also over time. We got started a little bit late. So seeing none, thank you all for being here. Thank you all for your participation. Look forward to continuing our important work together.